It's absolutely contrary to what our country stood for and continues to stand for. I think is incredulous, and I honestly believe that future generations are going to look back at this time and they will vomit. They will absolutely, with so much indignation, look at what we are doing and wonder why people didn't stand up and shout at their government officials. And what a travesty it is that we have not learned. Seems like we haven't learned anything from the times when segregation laws and racism was just the thing to do. The polls of our troops, it might not be unprecedented, but it's un-American. It's absolutely contrary to what our country and our military stands for. That we would even ask the question, do you think discrimination is okay? And that we would have to study that. I will give you the Cliff's Notes version. You can read the Constitution, and you can see that discrimination is in no way in keeping with what America stands for. So when we're talking about polling and asking opinions of soldiers, service members, nobody ever polls the soldiers on whether we should go to war or not. Nobody ever polls the soldiers on whether it's going to be difficult for them. Nobody ever says, what do you think about your commander-in-chief being African American? Nobody ever polls in that way, and why should we ever poll when we're talking about doing the right thing? It's shameful that you were actually asking the question.
Dan Choi, West Point graduate, Arabic linguist, Iraq war vet. He was just discharged under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. We'll have more with him in a minute. Stay with us. Universal Soldier, Buffy St. Marie. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As we return to my interview with the West Point graduate, Iraq war veteran, Dan Choi. He was just discharged from the military for admitting he's gay. Do you know what number you are? And I hate to put it like that, but where you stand in the number of gay men and lesbians and transgendered people who have been discharged from the military for your sexual orientation?
Right now the estimate is at 14,000.
Since when?
Since the beginnings of Don't Ask, Don't Tell in 1993 and 4. We've seen so many hundreds that were kicked out just last year, though, under President Obama's watch. I don't know what number I am because those numbers are actually a very low estimate, and it does not include Reserve and National Guard soldiers, of which I am one. I am also an Arabic linguist. I'm qualified, but my job is an infantry officer, so I don't even get counted in that statistic of those Arabic linguists. Qualified Arabic translators and interpreters who are getting kicked out.
How do you feel that Don't Ask, Don't Tell began under a Democratic administration and it continues under, you were discharged under a Democratic administration?
Well, democracy doesn't depend on one political party's platform. Democracy depends on every one of us standing up to elected officials, whether they have a D, an R, an I, or whatever after their name. They have an obligation to uphold and to defend and to support the Constitution, and when that doesn't happen, we hold them accountable. I think one thing that we learned from the civil rights movements, as well as a lot of the human progress movements throughout our history of our civilizations, we need to remember that progress doesn't depend on somebody else's platform, and progress doesn't depend on us just supporting the people who are in power. It is their job to enact and to manifest what America stood for and stands for. That's their obligation. It's not my job as a gay American, legally among those American citizens who are oppressed, probably the most oppressed legally in America today. It's not my job to help the president with his political aspirations, for him to keep his job. And for any Democrats who are here or who are listening, I'm sure we have a couple of them here, if you're asking me to help you keep your job or your political career, I think you're asking the wrong guy for sympathy, just about today, at least.
Do we still call you Lieutenant Dan Choi?
Well, you can. I am a former lieutenant. I've served, and I'm very proud of my service, and I'm very proud to continue serving. But whether with a rank or with a title or not, whether with a pension or a paycheck or not, we still have an obligation. And honor and dignity does not come through titles, does not come through class or paycheck, wealth, or any of the other constructs of honor that we might think our society says is what honor is. It's absolutely false to think that. Honor and dignity comes from our ability to stand up to what we know is right.
Dan Choi, you went to West Point at 18. How old are you now?
I'm 29.
11 years you've served in the military. What made you decide a year ago to come out on national television?
I came back from Iraq, and many times when I was sitting in the barricade areas within the compounds or in my Humvee, I thought to myself, when am I going to get along with my life, get along with the truth, reconcile who I really am from what I've been pretending to be? And many times I would spend alone in Iraq. Many nights I would be very contemplative. I came back from Iraq and I decided that it's not worth it. I could have died at any moment in the area that I was, in the triangle of death. Why should I be afraid of the truth of who I am? I came out to my parents. I found love, and that was the reason why. It was difficult to come out to my parents. You know, with Don't Ask, Don't Tell, sure, I could get kicked out. I knew that. I could give up a lot. And a lot of people have given up quite a hefty sum of benefits, including your medical benefits, your right to go to a VA hospital without paying, even if your disability rating is something like mine. I'm 50% disabled from my time in service. I stood to lose all of that, as well as scholarship monies, GI Bill, and a home loan through the VA programs. And I realized that those were things that we could give up. That was nothing compared to the prospect of coming out to my dad, who's a minister and he's affiliated with the Southern Baptist Convention. He's still in denial. He tells me every single time you go on media, you must make sure that they know that I do not officially condone who you are. I do not officially love you for who you are. I cannot say that. That's his interpretation of what the Southern Baptists believe. And I wasn't afraid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell in the military in that regard. I was afraid of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell at home. Coming out to them really allowed me to finally meet up with people who've also been through it, who've also served in the military, other West Point graduates. When we talked about our love relationships, we wondered why we were holding those back. I've wanted to go back to Iraq and to Afghanistan. But then I thought, if I die in Afghanistan or Iraq, then would my boyfriend be notified? Or would he have to hear about it through Democracy Now! Or CNN? Or who would be the one telling him? And the fact of the matter is, Don't Ask, Don't Tell forces our families into the closet and into non-existence. And that's no way to support our troops or the families that allow them to continue to serve.
Dan Choi, what was your mother's reaction?
My mom, when I told her, she tried to express as much Christian love as she possibly could. I asked her, if I tell you what's going on, will you love me? She grabbed my hand and she said, of course, I will always love you. And said, I'm gay. And she grabs my hand even tighter and says, I love you, but that doesn't exist. It's not in the Bible. It's wrong. And I don't know any gay people. I don't know any gay people. I don't know any gay people. And I'd asked her a month later. She said, okay, I know one gay person. She said, 2 months later, she said, okay, I actually know a lot of gay people.